And I use the term loosely. This is the follow-up and will be the final video in the audience participation video. We're going to put this back together again today. We're going to take it for a test ride, and I'm sure it's going to work faultlessly when I'm done with it. So let's take a look at some of the comments, and let's take a look at some of the parts. And then I'm going to shove the trans back in this big hole over here and hopefully finish it up and hopefully take it for a ride all in one day. There were quite a few comments. I printed them up. And obviously you're not going to be able to read this, but they're all on the YouTube anyway. All the ones marked with orange oil over here thought it had something to do with oil. And it very well could have. I don't know. One guy over here said, I will invoke the spirit of Old Campy of New Orleans. I don't know who Old Campy of New Orleans is, but if somebody could tell me what that means, I'd be glad to hear it. Could oil be a problem? You know, I don't know. We're going to look at the trans. I'm going to talk about that in a second. Several guys thought that the dogs on the gears were bad. A couple people wanted to know whether it was test driven at all, and yeah, I rebuilt this engine a couple of years ago. I test drove it, probably not very much, and I say that because the bike was unlicensed and uninsured. When I get done doing a bike for a guy, if it's got no license and it's got no insurance, it gets an abbreviated test ride. I'm not risking myself getting a ticket because the bike is unlicensed and uninsured. Ain't going to do it. So I probably got a few spins around the block. I know that the transmission worked fine. Otherwise, I wouldn't have given it back to the owner. So the trans worked fine when it left here. Let's see, what else? One guy took issue with the cracks in the welding on a crankcase. And yeah, that could be a problem if it was one of the engines where I did that major repair in the transmission countershaft boss area and I didn't get things lined up. Yeah, but the cracks, it had a lot of cracks, but they were the usual blowing out primary screw holes, drain plugs, just, you know, miscellaneous little cracks. Nothing really of a structural nature that would have affected the alignment of the cases. So I kind of discounted that. But anyway, let's take a look at the gears, the new and the old, and we'll see what the differences are. So the question posed in the previous video was, what would you do? Well, obviously, number one is to put the correct amount of oil in it. The number two gets to be the subjective area. What would you do? Well, I decided that this owner is going to buy a new countershaft low gear and a new countershaft third gear. You know, I'm trying to run a shop here, and this is, well, he's paying for these gears because if I'd replaced them last time when it was in here first, he would have had to buy them. So he's got to buy them this time. So the gears aren't free, okay? And these are Andrew's gears. But anyway, the question is, what as a shop owner would you do? Well, you know, this thing is sitting here, it's taking up space, it's taking up time, it's costing me money in the end is what it amounts to. So whatever I do, I want to do it once. I want to do it once and be done with it. And precautionarily speaking, he's getting a new countershaft low and a new countershaft third. This gear was the gear I installed. And remember from the previous video, main shaft, countershaft, the shafts were both replaced. Everything on the main shaft was replaced. The transmission door was replaced. So this trans had a lot of work done to it. And typically, I would be much more careful when I rebuild something like that that has most of the parts replaced, because you just don't know how everything is going to fit until you check it out. So I was pretty confident that it was carefully assembled and correctly assembled, and the clearances were correct. So I don't think that was an issue. This gear I thought was perfectly fine when I put it in, otherwise I wouldn't have put it in. This gear I thought was perfectly fine when I put it in, otherwise I wouldn't have put it in. Now there are little areas of wear on the edges here. Could that be a problem? I don't know. Was that the cause of this problem? I don't know. And you know what? When I get this all done and back together again, we're still not going to know, because I'm changing two things at one time, correcting the oil level and changing these two gears. So it could be one or the other, or a combination thereof. So we're really not going to know. My lesson I learned for the next time is anything that's marginal like this, I'm getting replaced. I don't want to do this twice again for another customer. So a guy might not like spending the money on the parts, but you know what? I'd rather him spend it once than me do it over again for free. But let's take a close look at these gears. All right, so here's the countershaft low, the new Andrews gear. And you could see, I tried to get the camera angle so you could see the back cut on these dogs. And yeah, this one is chewed up. Well, they're all a little chewed up on the old gear. The Andrews one's obviously much cleaner, much sharper. Yeah, I mean, this has got no choice than to work better than this. So, was this the problem? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? Okay, so here are the countershaft third gears. Andrews, of course, original HD. And you could see quite a bit of difference in the way these were manufactured. You know, I don't know, I wasn't in the Harley factory, but being an amateur machinist, I think this would have had to have been done on a like a horizontal mill with a big cutter that just came in, a big round cutter, and just scooped out all of this material. And I think, therefore, that the sides of this gear are straight. And you could see the little bit of wear from the low gear banging into this thing, okay? Now here's the Andrew gear. This was done with an end mill plunging straight down. And I think it was an end mill with a little bit of a dovetail on it, because I think I can see a little bit of a back cut on the faces of this gear, the faces inside these slots. So yeah, a much better product. So anyway, we're going to put these in, and I think everything is going to be good. So let's talk about this giant empty hole. They used to have a transmission in it, and the oil issue. This cavity is supposed to have 24 ounces. There's 32 ounces in a quart, so that's 3/4 of a quart, not even a full quart of oil, okay? And that probably would have, you know, had you at a level down here somewhere. I removed and measured 90 ounces of oil from this thing. So I'm guessing, and this is a guess, and I'm not going to fill it up with 90 ounces of oil again and measure the level. Geez, the thing was probably full pert near to the top, I would suspect. When the engine is running and it's got a normal oil level in it, you know, down to here, and you're going down the road, I would suspect that there's very little liquid oil in here. You know, the chain, the sprockets, the gears, anything that's in there is going to be whipped into a froth. And, you know, it's mostly going to be oil vapor droplets. It's going to be a cloud of oil in here. A cloud of oil just, you know, circulating around and getting everything. Up here, there's a ledge. And the ledge has got a little groove in it. And this is designed to catch those droplets and collect them. And the oil that collects in here is actually what oils this bearing in here. Just FYI. But very little liquid oil in it when this thing is running. So what is the effect of having this full to the top? That's a tough one. I wouldn't suspect it could work very good, and I have a couple theories, and I'm going to run them by you. Okay, when this thing is full of oil, this gear and this gear are down on the bottom, so they're going to be submerged. And the owner said that there was times when he was stopped at a light that it felt like it was trying to pull itself into gear. And I could believe that, because if this is submerged in oil, all of these cutouts are full of oil. And I suppose it could act like a torque converter. You've got two gears spinning in close proximity to each other. This gear, these slots in this gear are full of oil. And I think, like a torque converter, it's going to have a tendency to want to drag this gear along with it. A couple of people commented about hydraulic fluid lock and that being a real thing. Well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, I don't know, but certainly there's that possibility. Then, of course, there is the effect of all that oil on the clutch operation. It is a wet clutch, it is submerged in oil. There's not going to be a lot of oil between the plates anyway, because when the clutch is engaged, it's all squeezed out. But nonetheless, engaging and disengaging the clutch when this thing is full of oil is going to be a problem. What the answer is for sure, I still don't know. We're not going to know, but yeah, that definitely could have been an issue. So let's go on to a couple of other things. Wet sumping, yeah, it's a real thing. When I took this engine apart and got all the guts out of it and drained the oil out of it and cleaned it up a little bit, I could see oil dripping out of the oil transfer valve. So I removed the transfer valve, drilled a hole in it and threaded it and Loctited in a screw to seal it up. And when I pulled the transfer valve out, yeah, a bunch of oil came out of the engine, probably another quart. So yeah, the engine was very much full of oil. But anyway, took this out, plugged the hole, put it back in, staked it, it's in there. Well, now I'm sitting here a week later, and oil is coming out of the primary adjuster shoe bolt hole. And you can see it dripping down the case over here, and it's made a little puddle down in the bottom here. So yeah, this engine is wet sumping, and it's wet sumping a lot. Probably more than most. I mean, we went from a level of here to a level of here in about a week or 9 days thereabouts. So yeah, that's a lot. So that's where all the oil in the transmission came from. It came through the oil transfer valve. I used to plug these all the time, and then I had a customer who complained that his primary was spraying oil out. Maybe not spraying, but it was getting his boot wet, he said. There's that inspection plug right here that's got a vent hole in it, and he was convinced it was because I had plugged the transfer valve. And when the engine is operating correctly and the pistons are on the way up, the transfer valve opens and it sucks air into the engine, okay? So it does create a little bit of a vacuum in here. And when the pistons are on the way down, the little it's like a diaphragm type check valve is pushed out by air pressure and is supposed to seal. So that traps the compression on the bottom side of the pistons in the crankcase. Now, when the engine is sitting, there's no air pressure acting on that little diaphragm, so oil is free to seep by there. So I think that's what was going on with this. But anyway, because obviously this owner doesn't drive this bike a lot and I don't want to have this be a problem again, I plugged the hole. So whether he gets his bootleg wet or not, we'll find out later on. But that's another that's future problem, not the problem I'm dealing with today. This motor supposedly, like I say, rebuilt 2 years ago, and only 50 miles on it. The wet sumping. This thing has been sitting and sitting and sitting, and that doesn't help things. Oil is leaking through the oil pump, either through the check valve or through the gears in the bottom of the breather, if you believe that scenario with the seal in the bottom of the breather fixing it. you know, that's something that I'm not going to address. I told this owner, I says, you know, if you're not going to drive this thing for more than 30 days, drain the oil out of the tank. Some guys have actually put petcocks on the bottom of the tank, an on-off valve. And I don't recommend that because A, you're going to forget to turn it on, and B, unless you get a really big one, you could potentially restrict the oil supply to the pump, which is not a good thing. But anyway, if you're going to let your bike sit for, I'll stick with the 30 days, more than 30 days, drain the oil out of it so that this won't happen to any great degree. Yeah. You know, and theoretically, if this crankcase fills up, you could damage the engine trying to start it if the case is full of oil. Engines do a thing called hydraulic lock, and if the pistons are on the way down and this case is full of oil and there's nowhere for the oil to go, you're going to blow out the seal. They usually don't come off that easy, believe me. You could blow out this seal easy enough. And if you don't blow out that seal, you could damage other things. Depending on where in the stroke the engine is and whether or not the breather sleeve is open or not, you may just blow all the oil into the cam cover, in which case it'll go overboard through the vent. But anyway, that's engine oiling. I think that's all I'm going to say about that. All right, so here's the Andrews low gear and the Andrews countershaft third installed. I just put a thinner spacer. There was a question about whether I had the washers here. Yeah, the washers are in there. I put a thinner one here because the distance between the Andrews low and the Andrews third looked a little high to me. So I got my feeler gauges out, and yeah, that's a 58 in there, and it just barely fits, and it just barely fits on that side. So the clearance between the gears is correct. And it should be noted, if I put a thinner gear in here, if I put a thinner washer in here, when I set the end plates on this thing, I'm going to have to put a thicker washer over here to make up for the fact that the gear moved that way, I think about 15 thousandths of an inch. So let's see if it shifts gears. I got the first gear dogs lined up. You know, that's beautiful. Yeah, it doesn't get any better than that. Let's get the second gear dogs lined up. Neutral, second. Okay, beautiful. Let's go to third. We'll line the third gear dogs up. Whoops, wrong way. There we go. Third gear's in. We'll line the fourth gear dogs up. And fourth gear. All right, so shifting action is good. We'll go back to third. We'll go back to second. We'll go to neutral. This is interesting. The back cut on the Andrews gear is so good that it actually doesn't want to go into neutral. It won't pull out of the countershaft second gear. So I backed it off a little bit, and see, it nicely pulls out now. So we're in neutral. Go back to first one more time. Right in, and back to neutral. So this is good to go. I got to recheck the end plates, and I know this needs to be adjusted for sure. And I'm going to work off camera so that I could get something done. It's nice talking to you guys on video, but I got shit to do, you know. Anyway, we're going to put this together. I'll bring you back in a little bit. Men, today is tomorrow. I did get this done yesterday afternoon, but I decided to let the sealant on the primary cover cure overnight. So what remains is to fill the trans up with oil and take it for a test ride. It holds 24 ounces. That's 1.5 of these cups. When I drained the 90 ounces of oil out of this thing originally, that was pert near 6 of these. That's a lot of oil in there. But we're going to put 1.5 of these cups in there, and that'll be correct. The only immediate problem with test riding it is it started raining like a bitch like 10 seconds ago. So I'm going to make sure it runs. Driving will have to be after it dries out a little bit. Yeah, the rain quit. Looks like it dried up enough. Let's go for a test ride. Yeah, we're going to call this one done. The test ride was successful. I went maybe a couple of miles on it. Shifted fine, no tendency to pop out of second, pop out of first, no tendency to grab into gear from neutral. Clutch worked fine, gear shift worked fine. It did run a little rough. The carb needs some work. That is beyond the scope of what I had to do to it, though. It has an S&S on it, as you can see. I don't like S&Ss on Sportsters. I think they're a little too big for a Sportster, is what I think. I recommend Bendix's. The owner wanted me to look at it. I says, that's the kind of thing that's owner equity, man. I says, you're going to have to drive it, figure out what it needs, go up a jet size, go down a jet size, try it again. Go up another jet size, go down a jet size. You're going to play with the accelerator pump setting. I said, these could take several hours. That's going to be your owner equity part of this thing. So you'll need to figure that out. So yeah, it runs a little rough. Carb needs a little fine tuning. But otherwise, very happy with the performance. It feels good. It feels strong. It shifted good. The mystery is not solved. Was it too much oil? Was it bad gears? I don't know. And, I'm trying to run a bit of a business and make a little money doing this. I don't have time to drain the oil. Well, I don't have time to take it apart, drain the oil, put it back together again, fill it up correctly, see what happens, only to find out that it's still fucked up and that I got to go back in and change the gears. This needed to be an in and out one time. I needed to eliminate all of the possibilities of why it might have been popping in and out of gear. And to do that, I had to change that countershaft low and that countershaft third gear. So that got it done. Anyway, two areas of concern. The owner said that last time he had it running, it was taking a long time to pump the oil out of the crankcase back into the tank. And if you saw, after I got it running, I pulled the cap off to verify return. Yeah, it had a good, strong return flow. Oil levels probably up to about here, and it was working fine. He's got a pressure gauge over here. It was reading 10 psi at, 1,200, 1,500 RPM. So oil pressure is good. The return is good. The pump is working good. It's been sitting here a couple of 3 hours since the test ride. There's no dribbles and drops underneath it. And initially, when I had it parked on my lift, this thing leaked a quart of oil. But, with nearly a gallon in the primary and the trans, I'm sure oil was oozing out of every possible orifice. This is another set of cases I have for another engine I'm working on. And I think the most likely source of the oil leak on this bike's engine would have been the kickstart shaft seal. That flat O-ring Harley seals this up with, ain't much of a seal. This definitely would have been below the level of the 90 ounces of oil in there, and this thing would have just dripped and dripped and dripped. It really doesn't seal very well. And with that, I think I'm going to put an end to this video. I think I could say the shifting problem could be narrowed down to one of two things, either too much oil or those two gears were fucked up. Anyway, thank you all ever so much for watching. Thank you all for the comments. It was very interesting reading them all. And with that, I am out of here, and we'll see you next time. Bye. Just a quick reminder. You can help support and grow this channel, first of all, and most importantly, by hitting that subscribe button. So if you haven't subscribed already, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. If you'd like to do a little more, join me on Patreon. Links down below. So go ahead and join me on Patreon if you feel so inclined. And finally, coffee cups, stickers, and gas tank covers are available. This is a new design coffee cup. I like the old ones, but I like these new ones even better. Links will be provided in the description down below. Get yourself some. And thank you all ever so much for watching these videos. I really appreciate it. Bye.